Once again, good afternoon, all. I'll just start off by introducing myself. My name is Yasser. I've been here with L&T Valves for 4 years. I've been in various functions such as production engineering and operations and digital initiatives. If anyone would like to share their expectations from this program, you're welcome to share. All right, I'll just go ahead then. So before I go into the core topic, I wanted to highlight two particular topics which are correlated to the topic I'm going to speak on. Uh, the people who've done MBA or are from non-engineering background may know about positioning. So positioning is basically what the company aspires to project itself to the world. So uh, this is the guiding principle in all the marketing material, collateral, the brochures, catalogs, and the backend team, the operations team, everyone work to make it happen. So everyone will know tagline. So Nike tagline is just do it. So tagline is what tagline is a simplified version of the positioning for the common people who see the brand from outside to get some idea on what to get some idea on what would be the value of the company. So positioning, as you can see, is what the company does from behind, and tagline is what the audience sees from the outside. If anyone in the audience knows what is our positioning, you can just unmute yourself or just mention in the chat box. Anyone has any idea what is our positioning? You might have seen it in the promotional videos or it recently. If you would have checked a YouTube channel, then maybe you would have seen it. Okay, I'll cover it in the upcoming slide. Before we go to our own positioning, to just give a better idea, Volvo is a company who has the positioning to be the safest car on the planet, and their tagline is for life. And they are living up to their positioning. For example, around 58 years ago, they patented something and they made it public for everyone. Can anyone guess what it was? Any guesses? Okay, so it is a 3 point seat belt. They could have just taken a lot of royalties by giving it to many companies by asking for payment, but they instead made it free for all, and it has saved over 1 million lives. So this is one of the companies that not only has a positioning for namesake, but they live up to that positioning by constantly improving the safety features of the vehicle. Now, coming back again to valves, the positioning of our company is future of valves. So we've done a lot of evaluation on why this positioning should be taken, and we checked whether are we really living up to it, because we are doing stuff in digital arena, like we are having RFID tags along with the valves. We've made a smart valve. We have some other features like doing inspection virtually through augmented reality platform. So these are digital technologies, but if you really look at the tagline or the positioning future of valves, it should be the product which should be futuristic. But if you see the valve as a product, it since many years it has been almost the same thing. There has been minor enhancements, minor modifications, but the basic end product has remained same since many decades. So now there is a lot of opportunity for us to innovate on the product, and it would be a major change. So another topic, the second topic I want to discuss before we go to the main topic, was value engineering. In the audience, if anybody knows what is value engineering, you can just unmute yourself and just tell us what you think it is. Okay. Okay, I'll just go ahead and tell what it is. It is basically to increase the value by lowering the cost. So what you have to mainly see is what function you need. For example, if you need a phone for calling, then if you focus only for that calling function and remove all the other things like camera and calculator and stuff like that, then you'll increase the value by removing all those non required functionalities, and you can get some 1 lakh. Instead of spending 1 lakh on a smartphone, you can get a phone for 1,000 rupees, and the main function of calling is there, and you're getting the maximum value out of the money. So same way, if you see Valve as a product, then the main function of Valve is flow control. But traditionally, we have been doing this only with a mechanical component, that is Valve. In this particular topic in today's sessions, we'll see how else we could control the functionality of Valve. So one particular functionality that comes to mind is temperature control. For example, instead of just having a valve for throttling using a globe valve or something, we can have some kind of a jacket around the pipeline that will, say, increase the temperature or reduce the temperature such that the density increases or reduces and the flow becomes as per our requirement. So this was one example. Now I have a small clip here. So let me know in case you're not able to see it.
Hi, my name is Hugh. Things get a little more interesting. The microbots are controlled with this neurotransmitter. I think of what I want them to do, they do it. The applications of this tech are limitless. Construction. What used to take teams of people working by hand for months or years can now be accomplished by one person. And that's just the beginning. How about transportation? Microbots can move anything, anywhere, with ease. If you can think it, microbots can do it. The only limit is your imagination. Microbots.
Sorry, I went to the next slide. So, any guesses? Is there any real world item that is similar to what was shown in the video? I also went to the slide by mistake, so you can guess what it was. Okay, I'll get to it. Basically, uh, even though they didn't call it the actual thing, what they were trying to show was something like a programmable matter. So there are tiny, tiny parts, and through programming, you can actually control the item to collectively form into an object and behave as we want. So now we'll try seeing how this technology can be used in the valve industry. So instead of using traditional valve, what this matter can do is it can be injected into the pipeline. Maybe we can have nozzles throughout the pipeline at regular intervals, and how like in the tire we fill air, same way that we can have the nozzle in pipeline through which we'll inject this small molecules. Once it is injected into the pipeline, then it can be programmed to form a barrier wherever we want. Basically, it will do the function of the valve. And the advantage is that right now we have like hundreds of valves throughout the pipeline. But since this is mobile, we can basically achieve function of hundreds of valves by just having material of this for one valve. So in case we need barriers in two places, then we'll have to insert twice the amount of molecule so that we have a barrier in two places. And you can think of the possibilities of such a matter once we find use in the valve industry. Now, for shutdown projects and all, we have to close the section of the plant. We need to remove the valve. Then we need to repair the valve, put it back, or we need to put a new valve altogether. But once this programmable matter is being used for the valve application, then the shutdown project we can do away altogether, since we can just inject the material into the pipeline wherever we want. So this was just uh, one particular concept, which is it is no longer 3D science fiction. The universities, many universities around the world, they have found minor success already. So as soon as it becomes more commercial, then we need to leap into it and try using it for our own application. Going ahead to the next one, another short video here.
So, when you look at the seas and oceans on the map, you might think that they just flow into each other. It seems like there's only one big ocean, and people just gave different names to its parts. Well, you'll be amazed how vivid the borders between them are. The border between the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans is like a line between two worlds. It's as if the two oceans meet at an invisible wall, which does not let them flow into each other and mix their waters. Why on earth does it happen? We know for sure there is no invisible wall inside, and water is water. What could interfere with its mixing? The thing is that water can be different too. The Atlantic and Pacific Oceans have different density and chemical makeup, the level of salinity and other qualities. One can see by their color that they are far from being the same. The borders between the two bodies of water with different physical and biological characteristics are known as oceanclines. Haloclines, borders between waters with different salinity, are the most spectacular, and this is what we see when the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans meet. The famous explorer Jacques Cousteau found this when he was deep diving in the Straits of Gibraltar. The layers of water with different salinity looked like they were divided with a transparent film, and each layer had its own flora and fauna. Haloclines appear when the water in one ocean or sea is at least 5 times saltier than in the other. You can create a halocline at home if you pour some seawater or colored salty water in a glass and then add some fresh water on top of it. The only difference is that your halocline will be horizontal and ocean haloclines are vertical. If you remember a couple of basic things from physics, you might argue that a denser liquid should finally end up lower and less dense higher. If that were true, the border between the two oceans would look not like a vertical line, but as a horizontal one. And the difference between their salinity would become less obvious the closer they got to each other. So why doesn't it happen here? Well, first, the difference in density of water of the two oceans is not that great for one of them to get down and the other to rise up. And yet, it's enough to not let them mix. Still, another reason is inertia. One of the inertial forces known as the Coriolis force influences objects when they are moving in the system of axes, which in its turn is moving too. In simpler words, the Earth is moving, and all the moving objects on it will be acted upon by Coriolis force, deviating from their course. As a result, the objects on the Earth's surface don't move straight on, but deviate in clockwise order in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern. But the Earth is moving slowly. It takes a planet a whole day to make a full circle around its axis. That's why the Coriolis effect gets obvious only in long time intervals with cyclones and ocean flows. And this is why the direction of flows in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans is different. It also doesn't let them mix. Another important difference between the two oceans' water is the strength of molecules connection, or surface tensile strength. Thanks to this strength, molecules of a matter hold on to each other. The two oceans have a totally different surface tensile strength, and it also doesn't let them mix. Maybe they could gradually start mixing with time, but as the flows in them have opposite directions, they just don't have time to do this. We think that it's just water in both oceans, but its separate molecules meet for just a short moment and then get carried away with the ocean flow. Don't you think, though, that only the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans don't get on well with each other? There are a lot of places on the planet where water in the two seas or rivers doesn't mix. There are also thermoclines, borders between water of different temperatures, like the warm water of the Gulf Stream and much colder North Atlantic Ocean. Chemoclimes are the most amazing ones. These are borders between waters having different microclimate and chemical makeup. The Sargasso Sea is the biggest and most widely known chemocline. It is a sea within the Atlantic Ocean, which has no shores, but you've got no chance not to notice it. Let's have a look at some other spectacular clines on the planet. 1. The North and Baltic Sea.
So that was just an example to give ideas on different ways where we can isolate two different media. So we saw example through salt concentration, through the temperature. So these are different ways where we can isolate fluid media. So this should give us a lot of ideas. Uh, the membrane technology is a very niche field, and there are many universities doing a lot of research on this. So we can find so far nobody has seen much of a valve application for this. But if we do the right collaboration with universities, then we may be able to, for example, use a membrane which changes the concentration as the fluid passes through it, and maybe that will not allow the backflow to happen, which is basically the function of the check valve. So it may also overcome a lot of the traditional disadvantages of check valve. For example, chattering near the pipe bend, minor backflow, and things like that. It can be like 100% only forward flow because the mixing is technically not at all possible due to a molecular level difference in structure. So these were the technologies that I had in mind for now. So the main idea of this presentation was to expand your horizon of thinking. So not limit yourselves with just minor upgradation of what valve we are having currently. So only if we go for something this big of a game changer, this will change the valve industry forever. So as of now, L&T Valves holds only like 1% of the global market, and even the biggest valve company in the world doesn't hold more than 1% of the global valve market, since it's so highly fragmented. Only if we bring in some new tech, then it will probably change the dynamics of the industry. So going forward, whenever you see something new technology, it may not be for valve, but it may be for something completely different. So if you come across any new technology, you've seen used for some new tech, you should start thinking on how we can use it for flow control. So then only our company may start innovating, and the valve industry as a whole will start innovating. So, and another specific thing is, as of now, everything that is controlling the flow happens internally. So, the gate valve, the disc is inside, the ball is in the pipeline. So, all control is happening inside the pipeline. But if we are able to start innovating and find a way to control the flow from outside, maybe some kind of ultrasonic barrier, something uh, which without cutting the pipeline, if we are able to provide a solution, it will tremendously increase the uh, it will tremendously reduce the time required to set up pipeline projects, and it will make life a lot easier. So that's another angle where you can think on how we can improve the valve as a product. So we need to do all this to live up to our positioning of future of valves. Uh, if any one of you has even right idea on how to go about this, then we can have a separate dedicated R&D team who can actually explore all these new technologies so that we can start right away. So probably if we start now, the valve industry is going to change a lot in the next 30 to 40 years as oil and gas gets phased out and nuclear power gets phased out. Probably new valves will not be required as much, and what will be required is replacement, and like how I had talked about injecting the programmable matter into the pipeline. So the more focus will be on how we can do replacement of valves and shut down projects very effectively. So keeping this kind of future in mind, we need to see how we can innovate in the how we can innovate the value of the product. And I think more than any other company in the world, I think L&T Valves has the right mix of very experienced folks. Since we're a 60 years old company, we have people who have experience uh, in the valve industry for 30 years, and uh, we also have really young people who've just joined the companies from IITs and NITs, and they will bring the new thought process, and with the experience of our experienced people, then we can probably come out with such innovative new products. And this will give us the first mover advantage. Once we build the new product, probably many people will copy it, but we'll have the reputation of developing it first, and people will come to us once we develop the product. So that's all from my side. I thank you all for joining this session. If you have any more questions, you can just uh, unmute yourself and ask your question. Anyone has any question, or if you have some ideas on some other technology what you saw, and how we can use it for our valve application, then you can share that as well. We have a lot of guys from design: Karthikeyan, Satish, Muthukumar, Sumit. Any ideas on what kind of new tech we can use for, for the valve application? Okay, it's fine if you don't have one right now, but this is a lot of food for thought for you. So you can think on it, and probably get back to us, or you can try innovating on your own, since you have a lot of liberty and freedom in the company. Even if you dedicate 1 or 2 hours daily on doing this kind of a research, and see how you can innovate the product, I think no one will object to it. And if you have some kind of a concept and you want to present it to the leadership team, and they will be all ears, and they'll support you in the development. So with that, I think we can close the session. Thank you all.
Thank you, Azhar.
Thank you, ma'am, for organizing the session.